Absolutely. You know, I think in last night's evidence, you know, that all the signs are pointing towards the Stars Newtown final. You know, I suppose Glen Rovers and the Pearson came into this game. You know, Glen had obviously lost their first round game against Newtown, but you know, they'd recovered well with wins over Blarney and Killa. And you know, I'd say they would have been quietly confident of having a good old battle against Newtown. But you know, Newtown seemed to overwhelm them. And I mean, Newtown were playing against the wind and still held the lead at half time, 198 points. And I think, you know, the writing was on the wall then for the Glen. In the second game, then I suppose the big talking point was just the introduction of Michael Cusson for Sarsfields. You know, at half time they were only leading narrowly 8 points to 1-4, but I mean, the second half they came out and scored 114. He scored 1-6. I mean, it was a phenomenal scoring display, but I mean, all year the signs have been that Sars have a lot of attacking talent. You know, I think they got 120 in their first round game, 223 against Ballinhassig, so they're putting up huge scores, and they obviously have huge strength and depth with the fact that they didn't start someone like Cusson, were able to bring him on.
Yeah, as you say, Fintan Cusson, he came off the bench, chipped in with 1-7, I think. He's obviously spent most of the season on the bench for the Cork footballers. Of course, he did suffer a big injury setback earlier in the year, but do you think Dennis Walsh might try and coax him into action with the hurlers next year?
I'd say on the evidence of last night, I mean, you'd have to be considering it as a possibility, you know. I mean, he changed the game, really, you know. I mean, it was a fairly tight match. Not much between the sides in the first half, you know, and it appears to get a good boost before half time with a goal from Isaac Alpine to bring it back to 1. But you know, I mean, we've seen this before. I mean, like last year in the county semi-final against Glen Rovers, it was the introduction of Cusson really changed the game for Sarsfield, and he offers them a great outlet at full forward. The fact that they can send in a high ball towards him, and you know, he's such a big man, so strong that he can win possession and can score. And I mean, you know, that's the thing. I suppose Cork could definitely do it.
And it could become a tug of war, really, couldn't it, between Conor Coonan and Dennis Walsh trying to keep hold of Michael Cusson. Obviously, Coonan hasn't used them that much this year in the championship, and it's kind of been proven in the last few years that balancing senior hurling and senior football and the county level, it's not really doable anymore.
Absolutely, you know, I mean, I don't think it's going to be viable. I mean, you already saw earlier this year, Isaac himself was trying to balance both in the early rounds of the National League, and I suppose kind of around late March, early April, he basically had to make a decision, and he threw his lot in with the hurlers. So I suppose if Dennis Walsh comes calling, you know, Michael Cusson had to make that decision as well. But I mean, I think last night proved, you know, I mean, he hadn't much hurling done in recent weeks because of his inter-county football commitment, so that's why he didn't start. But you know, Sarsfield needed something to kind of power them on in the second half, and he certainly was it. And then you had all around the pitch then, all you know, the likes of Ray Ryan in defence, Pat Ryan in midfield, and then some of their young forwards like Keane McCarthy and Daniel Roach. Everyone began to sparkle then, and I mean, they ran out comprehensive winners.
Yeah, just getting back to last night's action as well, Fintan. Newtown very convincing, as you said, in their win over Glen Rovers. 121 to 13 points is how it finished. Newtown, probably they've underachieved over the last few years, really. They've always looked very strong on paper. They haven't won a county since 2005, but do you think this could be their year?
Well, I think one thing is, you know, having not won it in 4 years, I think they've got back a bit of hunger, you know. I mean, they won so much between, let's say, Ben and Jerry's team at minor 21 level, and then won 3 counties in 2000, 2003 and 2005. And of course, obviously an All-Ireland club win in that time as well, you know. The last few years now, you know, perhaps people were saying maybe the end was coming for Newtown, but, you know, I mean, like Ben and Jerry look like, and Pat Mulcahy, you know, you've a really strong, experienced nucleus there, and then you also have some young players like Jamie Collin, Ryan Clifford and Jack Hurley and Colin Loughlin as well last night, who really came back to form, you know, scoring 4 points. And I mean, already this season, you know, they destroyed UCC, they beat Glen in the first and then beat Glen again last night. So I mean, I think they're coming into form, and I mean, right now, you know, I suppose we'll have to wait and see how the other 2 quarterfinals pan out, but I mean, right now in form, you'd have to say it's looking like a Newtown Stars final.
Yeah, and that result last night is obviously a major setback for Tomás Mulcahy and Glen Rovers. They probably fancied their chances this year after quite a positive showing last season, but that was their second championship defeat to Newtown this year, as you said, and to lose so convincingly as well was obviously a massive blow.
Absolutely, you know, I mean, like last year, I suppose, you know, they came very close to beating Stars in a fantastic semi-final, and, you know, this year, okay, they lost by 6 points, but I mean, they seem to, in the games against Blarney and Killa, seem to have got the balance right in the team, you know. David Cunningham gone back to full back, and you know, he's a huge player for them. And then you also have the likes of Graham Callan and Donald Cronin in good form. You also have Patrick Horgan up front, you know, Owen Cronin back into the side. But I mean, I suppose being down by 4 points, having played with the wind at half time, you know, things weren't looking good for them. And, you know, I mean, it is a big setback for them, you know. I mean, they've obviously had a lot of success at minor under 21 level in recent years, but, you know, haven't been able to make the break towards senior yet.
Yeah, no, there's another quarter-final game coming up this evening, Fintan. CIT taking on Bright Rovers down at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. A difficult one to call, really. How do you see it going?
Yeah, it is a very difficult one to call. I mean, I think a big factor here is going to be how CIT's players are after such a tough weekend. You know, I mean, there was a lot of them in action for the Cork Intermediate Hurlers yesterday, and you also had this morning Lorcan McLaughlin and Aidan Walsh had to play a club football match with Kanturk this morning. And then they have to play for CIT tonight. And like for Lorcan McLaughlin, who's a big player for CIT, that will be his third game in the space of 24 hours, which is a crazy schedule, really. You know, and you know, a lot of them would have been involved in club action over the last week. I suppose, you know, Bright Rovers, you know, had the benefit, you know, they've all been together, they've been concentrating on this game, and there's only been one match in their minds that they've been building up to, and they've recovered well from the first round defeat to Killa. But, you know, CIT, I think, have assembled a very strong side. You know, they had 3 very good wins over Musgrave, Duhallow and Carrydown. And you know, certainly they do have the talent, but I suppose it's just going to be a question of what sort of conditions they're going to be in after such a hectic recent schedule.
Absolutely, yeah. And in terms of the Senior Hurling Championship overall, Fintan, as we speak, there are obviously still 6 teams remaining. It does seem to be quite open, but it's probably hard to look outside Newtown or SARS, as you said, or even Erin's Own as well. I mean, they have a tough one next week against the Bars. Who's your money on to win the championship at this stage?
I think it's very hard to look past Sarsfields just from the point of view. I think their strength and depth is just incredible. You know, I mean, they had a guy, Owen O'Sullivan. He played for the Cork Miners this year, and you know, last week and for Sars and Minor Championship, he scored 15 points. And you know, they've had no cause to use him. I mean, if in most clubs, you know, if you're a county minor, he'd definitely be challenging. But I just think that they have such strength and depth, and you know, I think they were out of, you know, they were in the wilderness for so long, you know. I mean, last year was the first one in 51 years that they kind of want to make the most of the current kind of good form that they're in and, you know, try and get a back-to-back title. But I would think Newtown are their biggest challengers, because I think Newtown kind of have the hunger back, and at the moment my money would be on a Newtown Stars final.
Yeah, now just going to switch briefly, Fintan, to the Senior Football Championship. And you were in Bandon on Thursday evening to watch Carbery defeating Nemo. A bit of a shock, obviously, to see Nemo finally beaten. But when you look at the calibre of players in that Carbery side, it shouldn't have been a massive surprise, because they do look very strong. Obviously, Bantry Blues being relegated as well from the Senior Championship last year has been a massive benefit. Yeah,
well, I think that's the first point you made there, just about Bantry. You know, I think that's very crucial. I mean, having someone like Graham Canty available to you just as a leader in the dressing room and everything is obviously massive. And they also have Kevin Harrington available to them in defence, and you know, he did a very good job when he was switched on to James Masters for the second half on Thursday night. I think the other thing as well, like all divisional sides, it's a question of preparation, how much they do. And the thing is, Carbery have got it very right this year. You know, they've played a lot of challenge games. You know, they've been training regularly since early in the year, and then they have such a good pick. I mean, like when the game was tight in the second half, they were able to bring on players like Daniel O'Donovan, who was playing with the Cork Juniors yesterday. He got 4 points. They brought on Dennis O'Sullivan, who was on the Cork 21s this year at centre back. Brought on Kevin O'Driscoll, another Cork 21, and I mean, that's magnificent resources to have at your disposal, that you can bring those sort of players off the bench when the game is tight. You know, I think Carbery were the better side, but I suppose the game did turn on the kind of lucky break they got with their second goal with 10 minutes to go. I suppose Nemo have been on the road a long time, and there have been signs this year, you know, that they struggled to kind of regain the form that had got them to the last 4 counties in their championship matches so far this year. So, you know, I mean, it was a great occasion. There was a huge crowd in Bandon Forest. I think Carbery did deserve their win.
Yeah, and the football championship itself now is quite open as well. Carbery playing the Bars in the semi-finals, and Clonakilty versus Bishopstown. Carbery were the last team to win the county, of course, before Nemo. That was back in 2004. Are they favourites for the county now, Fintan?
I think they have to be, you know. I mean, I think defeating a side like Nemo, and especially the fact that they were trailing after 20 minutes by 5 points, they turned it around very well. And obviously, you know, the options that they have on the bench, and, you know, having a leader like Graham Canty on their side, you know, that's obviously a huge boost to them. But the Bars, you know, I mean, like, football is booming out there at the moment, you know. I mean, they're in the County Unknown final tonight. They won the 21 championship last year. And they've had a couple of very good wins now over in Piershick and Castlehaven, winning both of the games by a point. So, I mean, that kind of shows the battling qualities they have. So I think, you know, they'll put it up to Carbery in the semi-final.
Well, Fintan O'Toole of the Irish Examiner, thanks again for talking to us here on the Big Red Bench, and we'll speak to you again soon.
No problem, Paul.